Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisors of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week for the last 200 episodes, Ben, we bring you the insider's guide to property, finance, and money management.
Is this where I celebrate?
Come on. And this is where I celebrate. Ready? I always still love the pen clicks. Hey? They said we'd never make it.
Oh, they did.
Hey,
Happy 200th
episode. Happy.
Feel like Don Bradman.
Happy, yeah.
Feel like
200.
just, raising the bat.
Yeah.
200. There it is. Just a regular thing for him.
How far have we
Special
come?
for us.
Like, we now have our own studio here. Back in the day, it was just at a desk, you and me riffing it.
There was a little photo of us over there sitting at our desk, riffing it.
But we, to celebrate, we were talking about what do we want to do for our 200th, right? And you're a pretty humble guy, and
I don't know about that, but
you don't make too much of a fuss. It's usually me and Ivis that are making the fuss. You're just a no fuss sort of guy.
I just turn up.
You just turn up. When we got word of today's guest,
yes,
mate, you were cartwheeling, high fiving all around the joint, wasn't he, Ivis?
I told you when you think about the number one person in money and investing.
This person.
It'd have to be this person in Australia.
Well, let's build it up, Ben. Back in the 90s, this person was captivating the television audiences of Australia.
He was.
Had ratings that would be the envious of any
Almost
channel right now.
1 in 2 households were watching his show.
His show. Now, this guy couldn't walk into a restaurant or a public place without people sort of treating him like a celebrity. And he was just had a massive impact on me as a teenager, I would say.
And he's gone on to dedicate his professional life into serving others.
Yeah. And
that is, if that's not purpose and fulfillment all in one, and continues to do so. Heads up the Literacy Foundation, just doing some amazing work as the chair of some of these associations, and obviously in the investment business that he created with his other partners, transform the lives of all of those people who were involved.
And Ben, this particular person keeps it pretty real too, in terms of has a level of wealth that hasn't allowed him to forget that he's a human being who's focused on doing activities rather than accumulating shiny objects.
But little clue in here as well. Money behaviours and money habits and where he learnt them from.
Yeah. So let's, without further ado, Ben, so who did we actually get the privilege of interviewing?
Mr. Paul Clitheroe.
Mr. Paul Clitheroe. Now, for some of you may not know who Mr. Paul Clitheroe was, but if that's the case, I think that you are in for a treat. For those of you who know who he is, you won't be disappointed. For those of you who don't know who he was, because you're just born a little bit later, Ben.
Yep.
I'm talking about our Gen Ys, perhaps. Our millennials. Did you know Ivis? No.
There's a couple in the office who didn't know, but all of the stalwarts, all the people my age with a little bit of silver salt and pepper in their hair, they certainly knew who this is. And I got some books. We took a book along.
He took the old
Now,
archive.
he's a busy man, so we had to pre-record. We had to fly to Sydney and had to spend some time earlier to catch him. But we got an hour and a half of his time, and my goodness. What a thrill.
It was a thrill, you're right. So stick around for that, folks. But in the lead up to that, I have a Mindset Minute theme today, Ben, for our 200th. No matter where you're at, how much money, time, skills, or resources you don't have, there is someone out there that had less than you and still made it work.
There we go.
So,
who was that quote from?
That was from James Wedmore.
Yes.
It was we saw when we were in the States recently.
The States.
So the point of that being is, and I've got leading on from my Mindset Minute from last week, which was from the guy that we saw, the 28-year-old. It's all about problem solving and taking action. You don't need to know everything. So I'm going to say that again. No matter where you're at, how much money, time, skills, or resources you don't have, there is someone out there that had less than you and still made it work. So just before we do cut to this episode, Ben, it does go over an hour, which we've very, very rarely done.
Yeah.
But what I will say to you is it's worth the time investment.
Yeah.
Story starts from the very beginning and it keeps that pace all the way through.
Yeah, we weren't going to break it down into two.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to do one big one because it's our 200th. So we've just taken a little bit of poetic license and we've pushed it out a bit.
So for those of you that are listening on the commute, there's a bit on the way in and a bit on the way out today.
And maybe some on the weekend.
But it's well and truly worth it. So let's cut to that now. All right, today, Ben, we are very lucky that we have got a very special guest today on our 200th episode.
Bryce, if you had to ask me, and we've got a bit of a squeaky table, so you have to bear with us on that, but if you had to ask me who I wanted to get...
I did ask you, and this is who you said you wanted to get.
I said, well, he's the king, right? I mean, we're going right to the top of someone who's been transformational in mum and dad's lives in terms of helping them organise and manage their money. You can't get any better than this man, and we're delighted to have him on.
Welcome to the podcast, Paul Clitheroe.
Good morning, guys.
How are we?
Well, apart from a slightly damaged hand from a bit of boat racing, I'm actually pretty good.
Well, if only the listeners could see that. It's actually quite an interesting web that you've got there. But just in terms of backstory, you're the founding director of a leading financial plan, IPAC.
Yep.
Been involved in the investment industry since you graduated from the University of New South Wales in the late 70s. You completed a 2-year postgraduate course offered by the Securities Institute and is a fellow of that body. You were a board member of the Financial Planning Association of Australia between 1992 and 94. And in 1993, you were elected the vice president. And then in 94, you were the president.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right, I was.
just reminding you.
But there's more.
There's more. From 93 to 2002, you hosted the popular Channel 9 program, Money. And we'll talk about that a lot more. And in 2009, you presented Second Chance, as well as Money for Jam. So pretty busy. And since 1999, you've been the chairman and chief commentator of the Money magazine. So a lot of people would know you from the Money days and from the magazine. You're also in 2003, the federal government elected you or appointed you the chairman of the Financial Literacy Task Force. The body has since evolved into the Australian Government Financial Literacy Board, and Paul continues as chairman. In 2008, you were appointed a member of the Order of Australia for service to the community and the financial sector through the promotion of financial literacy. And we were talking before we pushed record that there's numerous books, but just to name a few: Money, Marriage and Divorce, Making the Most of Your Assets in Good Time and Bad, Control Your Own Super Fund, How to Maximise Your Greatest Investment Asset, Free Yourself from Debt, How to Take Control of Your Finances, Making Money, The Keys to Financial Success, and Make Your Fortune by 40. So you've been a busy man.
And I'm 63. What a good remind me not to reread that.
But you did allude to it, but you're a keen sailor and golfer and live in Sydney with your wife and 3 children. So there's a lot to cover there.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
What are you most fond of in terms of your career as we sort of go through that? What do you think that most sticks out for you?
Oh, look, career-wise, I'm being privileged. I'm a frustrated school teacher.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's probably the reason I do so much and have done for 14, 15 years now, so much pro bono work around the government boards that I sit on, both for, I've actually been appointed now by 7 Prime Ministers as of this week, including twice by Kevin Rudd. But basically, people often wonder, and this I think is the kind of I don't want to go around in circles too much, but in a sense, I've always been really interested in, I think when you're young, look, I've a wife, 3 young children, mortgage, obviously feeding your family and paying your mortgage is a really good thing to do. But I've always had this deep sense that as a community, what can I put back? And you also see this. And really, if people just did a few basic things a bit better, the individual will be better off, the family's better off. If the family is better off, the community's better off. If the community is better off, I'm then selfish, because I'm then better off and so are my children as well.
Yeah.
So I just really, so, it's not all altruistic. I just think we're going to live in a happier place, and when I drop dead, I think my children and their children, my grandchildren will live in a happier place if we have a reasonable spread of wealth across the community.
Yeah.
And what I'm a bit fearful about is I'm a bit fearful that if you're clever with money and you've got a bit of money behind you, I'm a bit fearful about the rich getting richer and absorbing too much of the pie. Yep. Because where Australia is a really nice place is the average Australian, or more importantly, the median Australian, the 12.5 millionth Australian, the person right in the middle in this country, is actually well off. Whereas you go to America, and that middle American is not well off.
Especially in the last 10 years. It's
fallen off. The wealth's drifting off.
Yeah.
And so basically, and we know for a key fact that some simple knowledge is one of the things that gives you more balance in wealth and society.
Well, you mentioned a few things a bit better. A few things come to mind for you that people could do a bit better?
Oh, look, but that's the annoyingly simple thing. I'm laughing at you, blokes. You've got one of my old self. Look, I've retained, thanks to my dad or granddad or someone, I've retained a good crop of hair. And mind you, it's white. I noticed that you've got, that's positively brown hair.
Mine's got, and I've even got stains from it sitting on the bookcase for the years that I've owned it.
Well, funnily enough though, see what's fun for me is that the really fun things walking here today, just strolling down the street. I was buying a coffee, and someone said to me, "Oh, Paul, just want to say thanks." No, but why? And I get this. This is probably my very favourite thing I do is that I get this pretty much daily. When you started the Money Show, you said put an extra $10 a week in the mortgage, and what every single person says is, "I thought that was such nonsense." Like my mortgage is the size of a barnyard, and how is $10? Like, come on, like surely you're conning me. And so basically, what I love is, and what these people are saying is, thanks to that $10, I paid off my mortgage between 5 and 7 years early.
Wow.
And don't forget, we're not talking $800,000 mortgages 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so the $10 had, maybe today you need to put 20 or $30 in. But I think what I'm doing there, in my opinion, is that how do you teach people compound interest? We can use the words compound, and the reality is people glaze over. Yeah. But I think if you just say to someone, "Oh, for God's sake, I'll use modern English, rather than $10, for God's sake, just put $20 a week into your mortgage, will you?" Yeah. And so in my opinion, it's just that really, it's making stuff real. There's no point me saying telling my young adult kids, save for your future retirement. And young adult kids go,
too far away.
What sort of Fruit Loop are you?
Yeah.
Come on, dinosaur. So what I think I've managed to do okay over the years is try and put things in a meaningful sense. Like put $20 a week into your mortgage, top up your super by $20, particularly if you're over 45-ish. Just simple stuff. Spend less than you earn. If you don't want to do a budget, don't do a budget. I don't care. But if you've got $500 a week after tax, don't spend $500 a week. Work it out. Yeah. If a budget helps you, so much the better. Yeah. But I've always tried to phrase it in terms of what makes you better off. I think it's important.
Yeah. Now, Paul, going to your backstory, a couple of episodes ago, Bryce and I sort of shared how we had our money behaviour from our parents.
Absolutely.
And you don't fall too far from the tree, as we say. And we shared a couple of stories around, sort of moments in time where we would play with a tangible money or whatever it might be, and it gave us a sense of context and so forth. For you, you're born in England, is that right? When did you start to think that money was important, and what were your parents like with money to sort of give you that sort of interest that's taken you into the career that you've gone into?
Probably the most important question for the day, actually, because in terms of younger parents, maybe older parents, grandparents, the thing that I had and the real piece of fortune I got, and listeners may not believe me here, but what happened around our family dinner table gave me a career, and it allowed me to make money. How important is that? It allowed me to pay a household.
Purpose and...
So, what happened at my dinner table didn't happen at many, and this is sheer luck. My father was a very liberal English physician, doctor, and came from a liberal English family. And so therefore, around my family table, even at quite a young age, I grew up in the country town of Griffith. In fact, my dad was about the only legal drug dealer for about 300 miles. Griffith was...
legal. I get the concept of that.
Legal. A doctor's able to offer you drugs.
If you don't understand what we're talking about, just Google Griffith and you'll understand that there's a lot of things that are grown between the other plants, between the citrus fruits.
Griffith is a wonderful place to grow up, by the way. I went back recently for a school reunion. I really adore Griffith, but I do think that's a pretty funny story. So in my table, in a liberal English family, two things happened in the 19... So I came out, so I'm born in 55, came out when I was 8, 1963 we arrived, as 10 quid poms. I think Griffith had 14 English doctors at the time.
Wow.
well, most of country New South Wales in particular was populated by English doctors who were just, I think National Health Scheme wasn't going so well in England those days, and I think Australia is very fortunate to have all those English doctors, by the way. Yeah. But basically, at my dinner table, strange things happened, and my kids would be amazed that, you know, that being a doctor, Dad was keen to talk about sex, and this in a mid-1960s country dinner table.
Wow.
Whoa. Now, I'm not talking about detailed Kama Sutra stuff here, guys, but Dad, with being a doctor, you know, really couldn't see. Now, the other thing he also had is that he actually would argue he wasn't particularly good with money. But he'd also argue that as a doctor in a country town, he earned enough money in a sense that living in a place like Griffith, where I think we paid $13,000 for a house, is that the lifestyle wasn't that grand, right? Yep. So if you're earning a decent income in a country town, bluntly, it's hard to go backwards. I mean, Dad probably couldn't spend more than he earned if he tried. You know, he used to go to the Rotary on Tuesday night, which I think was $5 for the meal or something. You know, no, but seriously, it was a life he loved. Good luck to him. But the other thing is that he wondered, though, knew that myself and my sister would be in those days, no country unis. We were going to a city for a university. Yep. And I think he was sort of wondering, well, how are they going to get by in a city? And so money was a subject of conversation at our dinner table. And so, not in the sense of, I earn this much, kids, aren't I great? Yeah. But more in, oh, look, guys, we need a new car next year. Now, if we're going to do a new car, you know, my mum might have been keen to go back to England. Now, you know, it's kind of not really you kids' decision, but we want you kids to know that Mum and Dad, but this is not an argument, by the way. Mum and Dad are having a conversation with you at the dinner table about, look, will the car live another year, and do we go back to England next year? And so what I heard around the dinner table was I heard that you could only have stuff if you can pay for it. And I thought that was really interesting. And then dear old Dad decided, and that's why I bang on about this so much on every TV, whatever. Dad and Mum decided that they'd buy probably the equivalent back then of about $100 a year worth of shares for myself and my sister. And I'm often interested, if you've ever wondered why, because obviously at the end of the day, I think most of us can't pick shares. And so a very low cost managed fund is, or an index fund, or you know, Vanguard, whatever, something really cheap is probably the way we should go. But Dad said, you know, they weren't, silly, Vanguards weren't around in those days, but Dad decided that he and Mum decided they'd buy shares and stuff myself and my sister knew. So they bought shares in stuff like Coles and Woolies and BHP and Coke. And we banked with National Australia Bank. And so they bought a few shares in National Australia Bank. And then they added our Christmas money to it each year. And they encouraged grandparents to add to the Christmas money to buy a few little shares. Now, I thought this is the world's most boring crap until I was about 14.
But it is boring.
Yeah,
it should be boring.
Really, but about 14, though,
yes, true.
I think this had turned into a couple of $1,000s, and all of a sudden I'm thinking car. When I turned country kids, transport, absolutely. No public transport, and I'm thinking turn 17, get a car. But by the time I got to 17, you know, so it's a bit like people getting interested in super. The magic word these days seems to be when your super hits 100 grand, all of a sudden you pay attention. But all of a sudden I thought, hang on a sec, there's like, what's going on here? Mum and Dad are only putting in, you know, $50, $70. Like, why have I got
this amount of money?
And so I became really quite interested, and then of course immediately chose commerce as one of my elective subjects for years, my last 3 years of school, and then immediately decided I'd do economics. And so you've got this weirdo situation where I think if Mum and Dad had thrust it down my throat, I would have run for my life. But it was never done like that. It was, in those days it was all mail. Oh son, your dividends, and obviously Dad and Mum ticked the dividend reinvestment box. And Dad would say just quietly, oh, by the way, you know, your BHP, you've got another 3 shares out of your dividend. And if you didn't want to talk about it, they wouldn't talk about it. Wow. Smart, eh?
Yeah, very smart.
And so I think for years and years and years it was left unsaid at the dinner table.
Where did you pick it up? What age did you
I honestly think it was 14-ish.
Yeah.
And because
as soon as you saw the dollars in the bank, that's...
Look, I hate to tell you this. I've got a bad feeling that's true.
Why not?
It was the money.
It's tangible.
Yeah, but also, you know, I think the old man said some funny things to me. He used to like his math, and he said to me one day, every time you see one of your mates buy a can of Coke, you've just made 1/millionth of 1 cent or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was pretty funny. I think I used to annoy my mates in the school ground. Thanks for that. Why don't you buy 2 cans of cake? I'll make another 1/millionth of a cent.
Well, I still think that now. Like, I mean, we've got some people coming over Thursday night for a barbecue, and I went and bought some grog for the barbecue. And Jane says, "Oh, we're going to go Dan Murphy's or to I think it's was it Liquor One or something like that, which is the Coles." I said, "We've got West Farmer shares. We're going to to the liquor spot as opposed to Dan Murphy because we don't know Woolworths."
It's behavioural, isn't it?
It is.
So that's a very long story. So I think the message here is that in terms of behaviours, people say to me, "Oh, if I do pocket money with my kids, and if they save half their pocket money, and I'll add, if they've got a long-term goal, if they save $3 over 3 months, I'll add 3." That's all cool. Yeah. But we're absolutely convinced in my world of financial literacy that it actually is not what a parent or grandparent says, it's what you do.
Yeah.
And by the way, what you do can be bad as well, by the way. Because again, sex is no longer a taboo subject around the dinner table. 15-year-old daughter or son, I think safe sex and this sort of stuff, I think all parents are now okay. But how much do I earn? Or are we in trouble, mum and dad?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing really well, you don't want your kids at the wrong age boasting in the playground. And I don't think you want to say, "Well, I earn blah, blah, blah." But the thing that we've got to do is, and if you want to shape and you want to, and this is not brainwashing, but if you want behavioural change in your kids and grandkids, you actually have to open up a bit. And it could be the bad stuff. Who was that ringing? "Oh, I hate to tell you this, I'm late on my credit card, and I'm really late on my credit card." "Oh, we're going to lose the house, mummy or daddy." No. And we need to talk about this. I've made a mistake here. And the person has rung, it's over a piece of, maybe it's a purchase plan on furniture, But the thing is, we tend to hide the good and the bad to protect our little darlings.
Yeah.
And I just think I'm not saying frighten the daylights out of the children or grandchildren, but also don't make it seem too easy, because money isn't easy. So it isn't only the better stuff that we do. I think it's also the mistakes we all make. I remember one year, yonks ago, I accidentally because I tend to sit on a number of boards and have done for decades, a bit of money had appeared in a super fund. I'd already put the maximum in, so I was about $2,000 over. I remember about 5-6 years ago, if you made an over contribution, it was a financial catastrophe.
It was.
It was. Oh, it was just. I think it cost me thousands and thousands of dollars to fix this $2,000 mistake. But the kids are going, "What are you on about?" And going, "Oh, you're not going to believe what a dick I am, kids." And they were young adults at the stage, and they were going, "Oh, come on, Dad, you're the money expert." And I went, "Well, look what I've stuffed up this time."
It's got the transfer. So if we were sitting opposite your kids, what would they be saying? The same sort of conversations that you're having about your parents? Did you follow that through?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we bought shares for each of the kids, and a bit like myself, by the way, that little bit of money my mum and dad put aside when I was about 27, that had turned into $32,000.
So you didn't buy that car?
No, I never did.
No, smart.
I think the old man said, don't buy one, son, borrow mine. And I thought that was good money.
Yeah.
That was terrific advice. Thanks,
Particularly a doctor's car would have been all right. Would have had electric windows.
No. My dad always followed my one of the few terms I did invent many moons ago. I think it's the second or third money show, which is drive the cheapest car your ego can live with.
Yeah.
And drive the cheapest car your ego can live with. And my dad was a very low ego person, so no, I think it was a pink Holden or a red Holden or something he got on the cheap. But so basically, we did do the same with our kids. But with that, why that 32,000 story is so important. At 27, I'm married to Vicky. To start IPAC, we needed $20,000 each.
Yep.
So that 32,000 gave me the 20,000 to start a business, and the $12,000 left over. And Vicky was working as a school teacher, which saved a bit of money. But the $12,000 left over added to the bit of money we'd put aside and allowed us to buy a tiny little semi on a very busy road in Artarmon in Sydney. Yeah. And without that 32, we would have done one or the other. And to be quite blunt with you, because we were thinking about children, we probably would have done the property.
Yeah.
And I may never have got a chance to open my business, which is without any doubt the single best investment decision I ever made in my life, full stop.
Yeah, the business.
Yeah. Yep. And so in a sense, what we're talking here is we're talking little things.
Yeah.
We're talking openness, sensible openness around the dinner table with kids and grandkids. Examples of us doing things wrong, like my superannuation, and doing things right. I went online one day when I did a thing on, I think I did a thing on Today's Show about the find your lost super. And I think my middle daughter, she's a lawyer, so trust her, Geordie. So Geordie, I think, typed in lost super Paul Clitheroe. Paul had lost $2,200. How embarrassing is that? So it's all that sort of stuff. It's awareness stuff. Yeah. So and that's probably, I've said a lot about this, but I think it's such a critical issue. So it's just really about, as money becomes invisible, it's critical we parents and grandparents we can't provide visibility in the form of a $20 note and you spend it, you get $10 back. But with tap and go and so on, we've got to try and provide visibility around. At the end of the day, you've only got so much and you can buy any amount of stuff and you can go broke real quick. So it's our responsibility to work with kids, and that's why the government, the stuff I chair, is so heavily involved in this. Every government in the world is doing this, because as money becomes invisible, how the heck do we give people any sense of transparency?
And organisation of your money too. That's, we were talking about, how do we summarise, because we've just launched a new book around money management, because this is the crusade, right? For years, sitting in front of people and assessing their ability to organise and manage their money and make decisions, it's frightening, Paul, in terms of the people who, and even from high net worth people who can't, they tell me it's $500,000 incomes, they tell me they can't get through.
Oh, they're often the worst.
Oh, they are the worst.
With comments like, how can I live on $500,000 a year?
Exactly.
Really?
Really? And it's like, and then one recently said, oh, my mate's on 900 and he still struggles. And I'm like, that's just not correct. No. Like, that is just absolute rubbish.
Well, that goes back to your thing about, drive the cheapest car your ego can live with. Clearly their ego has to have an expensive car.
But the human condition, and this is something we battle in the world of financial literacy, the human condition we live with, and we know this, nearly every other creature that lives on this earth, as winter approaches, they store things. Take an ant, take whatever you like, you'll actually see behaviour around survival. Somehow in human DNA, particularly in my lifetime at 63, so I'm probably one of the 63-year-olds, an unusual species. We don't know in the history of human earth when you could find a 63-year-old male that hadn't been involved in a world war. So I missed Vietnam by about 3 years. I was just a bit too young for the birthday call up for Vietnam. So basically, and then we've had this 25 years of economic prosperity. And I think what we've done is, it's a bit like ants living in a world where there's always food. And maybe they'd forget to store food as well. But it's just extraordinary that it actually, you'll get this one all the time. I get people going, oh look Paul, I'm on $35,000 today, can't save. I'm like, okay, cool, I understand that. But the second I earn $5,000 more, I'll be saving, because I'll move from needs to wants. At the moment, all I'm doing is I'm paying rent, basic clothing and basic food. Now they are needs, okay? I've got complete sympathy with that.
Shelter,
but
clothing,
they all say the second I get $5,000 more, you see me in 2 years, I'll be saving. They never are.
No, it's just no habit.
Because also the foxtel becomes a sort of a need, not a want. And so basically, and that's what happened. I think sort of the numbers you're talking about are so far up the stratosphere that they don't apply to very many people. But but right through our community, the human condition is we will always spend 10% more than we earn, no matter how much we earn. And the only way humans tend to save money automatically is if someone on a big salary, if their salary increases rapidly each year, sometimes they can't spend enough to catch up for a couple of years. It's the human condition.
Well, it's interesting.
We're not designed, for some reason, we're not designed to save.
That first investigation you did for the federal government, I think it was about 2007. So I actually studied that in detail and did a presentation early in our business to people, because the thing that shocked me, I started as a mortgage broker and I was going out doing house calls and I was just like, oh my God.
You'd see all this stuff.
I was seeing I'm like, this is a serious problem. And I was out in the mortgage belt, so when I moved back to Melbourne, I was out sort of Whittlesea way, and I'm going into all these different houses, and it's the Harvey Norman interest free, and we've got the big screen television, and they can't, and we're tidying up and debt consolidating. And I said, I don't want to be back here in 6 months' time. Well, guess what? That phone call, and I just thought, this is a massive problem. Correct. So I started looking for some of the research on it, and I found that report. And what was fascinating about that report for me was that it was a self-assessment report. Right. So 89% of people said that they managed their money well, right? And I'm sitting there looking at, and at the time also we had a fairly high debt to income ratio, so we had a lot of household debt at the time. And I'm sitting back going, if you ask someone whether they're good with money, they're actually telling you they are, but I don't know whether solvency is actually good. You know, so there were some other fascinating insights into that particular, you know, and I think that was the question. The question was, are you good with money because you have enough at the end, like there's a little bit of surplus left at the end of the month.
Not red.
Yeah. And I think you raised a good point before about your ability to have that delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Like to let that money sit in there from $2,500 at say 14 to then turn into $30,000 and then to execute on that for better opportunities speaks volumes of your decision making around money. And I'm now fascinated about where that work is going with the government and seeing you getting into schools and into those types of areas. Can you share with us a little bit of the work you're doing in that space to sort of tell us how you're doing that, to sort of say, hey, just having $1 left over is not sustainable. It's that, you know, as you're talking about before, that human condition.
Yeah, so we, for 13, 14 years now, we've some 8 or 9 years ago, we've managed to get money skills into the national curriculum. So it's now a core statement of learning. And that's important. Because what you can do is you see you have many, and I started out doing this as an enthusiast. I'd go out to schools and say, can I give a talk to the kids? And I think many people are interested to do that. I think we're all well-meaning, but what happens is the teacher loses enthusiasm, you get busy, and the reality is I think you've made a tiny difference, but it's not a sustainable difference. Yeah. So what I was keen on is that what are the sandstone blocks? What's the stuff we can't do? And 14 years ago, the Department of Education said you can't do that. I learnt very quickly we'd all love money skills as separate subject matter, but we're being naive. And I get the financial planning industry saying it should be an hour a week of money skills. Yeah, well, so should obesity and so should the environment. You know, come on, let's grow up, kiddies. You know, let's be a bit mature here. You can only move stuff that you can move, and teachers are flat out teaching maths and English, and you know there's a few other things you'd like to learn as well. So basically, we ended up getting the agreement about a decade ago that this was just a fundamental skill, and where, in a sense, it probably had an advantage over, say, obesity or the environment, which are really, really important issues. Kids eating well is really important, and the environment is really important.
And processed crap food is cheap.
Yeah, correct.
Right, so
let's not even go there. Yeah. So basically, but you're right. The financial literacy, though, we could show the Department of Education is that it fitted into curriculum. So in math, if you're mucking around adding stuff up, you may as well add up dollars and cents.
That's right. Yeah.
If you're teaching commerce, we've always taught, very quick example, we've always taught compound interest as mummy rabbit eats daddy rabbit. Yeah. Now, when I was growing up in Griffith, and I remember sitting in first year of high school, looking out the window, and the teachers, droning on about, mummy rabbit. There were thousands of the bastards. But then myxomatosis came along. So that demonstration of compound interest, I remember my kids coming home one day saying, "What's this rabbit thing?" I go, "What are you talking about, kids?" And the kids go, "Well, they're about 13." And they go, "We've been taught that, mummy rabbit meets daddy rabbit." And they're both looking at, we didn't have a rabbit, thank God. I think the neighbours had a, white rabbit with pink ears desexed. Yeah. And the kids just weren't getting the compound interest. So basically we now do compound interest with, so we're teaching the same principle, but what they now do is rather than rabbits, which used to work beautifully, rabbits are everywhere, compound interest, you want your money to be like rabbits.
3 times a year they...
Bloody brilliant. So now what they're doing is they're going, well, look, how about mummy or daddy takes a cash advance on their credit card? And how stuffed are they in 2 years? Yeah. Or mummy and daddy misses one repayment on the purchase plan with the retailer and they're paying 36%. Or mummy or daddy puts an extra $10 a week into the mortgage. How much better off are they? So what the kids are now doing is, you see, we haven't distracted the teacher from learning. Yeah. In things like commerce, the contract, whenever kids need to understand contracts for anything to do with business. And the way I was taught was, and you need to maybe understand a bit about the law of tort, so you're looking at a 14th century property contract. Now, a kid today is going, "Oh, this is really stimulating." So what the teachers are doing now is they're saying, go home and find your phone contract. And the kids go, "Oh, bloody hell."
Yeah, I've got one of
and
those.
The parents go, "Bloody, where is the contract?" So eventually they come in with their contract and they learn contract around their phone contract. Yeah. And then the assignment is, take that contract, now document your phone habits for a couple of weeks, now find a contract that puts money in your pocket. Now, that is much better learning.
Yeah.
We've got contract, but we've related it not to a 14th century English factory.
Yeah.
And so what's happening in the curriculum is what I call, I think it is a behavioural concept, because they're learning all the stuff they need to learn in math, but they're getting examples that relate to me. And in English, if you've been asked to spell, wombat or kangaroo at a certain age, there's no reason why your spelling list can't have the words compound and interest.
Yeah, true.
And the way you'd put kangaroo into a sentence when you learn how to spell it, put the word compound interest into a sentence.
Yeah.
So what we've got a really simple situation which teachers tell us are aiding learning. And that, I think, is sandstone stuff. I think that's actually, because the teachers aren't distracted from math or English. But what the teachers are telling us is they're getting more effective. Now, if people are interested in this stuff, just go to the ASIC website, go to MoneySmart and look at the teachers area, and you'll actually see what kids are learning. You'll see it's all when you give something to the Department of Education, they're incredibly good at this stuff. What a kid is learning in kindergarten, across the 6 levels of learning, teacher resource packs, you name it. But don't think we're distracting teachers. It's fitting into teaching core subject matter.
Beautiful.
So I think that's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. So how far have you infiltrated? How easy or hard is it to get that in?
It's a nightmare. Look, it's really challenging chairing a financial literacy body in charge of strategy. And financial literacy at the end of the day is all about really spending less than you earn.
Yeah.
We're still running budget deficits, right?
Yeah.
What I'd really like at the moment is about $300 million to train every teacher in the country. And you may think, how does that work? Well, there are hundreds of thousands of teachers, and it only, inverted commas, costs maybe $1,000 to train a teacher. But then the headmaster or headmistress quite rightfully says, if you're taking my teacher for 3 days, where do I get the $500 for the replacement teacher for the day?
Yeah.
And so basically, to be quite blunt, at the moment, we've only trained, probably this is all in the ASIC reporting material if anyone's keen to read it, we've really only trained a bit over 10% of teachers. We're trying to train the trainer.
Yeah.
We do have schools that we're calling sort of our money schools, which are where, but in a sense, we are probably relying more than I'd like to on the trained teacher becoming the advocate in that school. We've now got PISA testing around financial literacy, which is good. In schools that ain't tested, they won't teach it. So it's good that money is part. We were 4th last year. Beijing killed us, by the way. Which doesn't surprise me greatly. There's some people who are smart with money. But Australian kids are going okay.
Well, culturally it fits in with their agenda,
correct.
right? We need to get to that way.
Correct. Back to parents and grandparents.
Correct.
So we're doing a lot there. Probably the latest thing that's happening is, look, universities are increasingly they're not calling it financial literacy, they're calling it money skills as first year subject matter. Yep. I've got the chair in financial literacy at Macquarie Uni, and there's quite a few of those around now, which is, so in a sense, it's funny really, I'm not really fussed about the next generation. Like when I'm dead, I'm less fussed about the next generation. I think we are equipping the next generation.
Yeah.
The people I'm really fretful about is me and my 8 million baby boomer mates. Your mortgage belting.
Who are a little short.
What do you see is the biggest challenge for them?
Well, the number one is, let's not get too negative here. As you probably saw in the latest Credit Suisse report, we Australians now, as an individual, the richest people in the world. I honestly, Australians, and then you go to the World Bank and you'll see that Australian adults are currently the most negative people in the world, which I find really a fascinating conundrum.
And I think we're the 3rd most indebted. Something like that.
Yes, but putting all that aside though, but thanks to compulsory super, and look, honestly, when I hear Australians whinging about the state of the world and the state of our health system, I do these Paul's tours to Syria. And you just dump a couple of dozen Australians there for a fortnight, and they feel better about everything.
Yeah, I bet they do.
They feel better about everything.
Funny
basically I do, when people are telling me, it's all terrible, blah, 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 the end of the world, I say, for God's sake, when did you last see an old car? And people go, like my first car was a $300 Datsun 1000. You used to push it everywhere because it barely ever went. And, but you play spot the old car. Talk to your grandparents about the house they lived in. I mean, I laugh in Griffith because my dad, our toilet was separate to the bathroom. That must have been a toilet out on the back deck which got enclosed. So we had separate toilet to bathroom.
Wow. And it wasn't the Outback Dunny, like it wasn't, enclosed.
Inside the property.
Yeah, wow.
And so, look, if you told my kids a property existed with one bathroom, look, for heaven's sake, can we just open our eyes a little bit? It's pretty damn good. It's not perfect. There's mental illness and drug problems and domestic violence. There's some awful stuff.
Yeah.
But it really is pretty damn good, and I just like people to take a little bit more responsibility. As everything is not someone else's fault. Yeah. It just is a health system going to deal with X million people a year perfectly? No, it's not.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if I get run over in the street out here, I would rather get run over in this country than just about any country on the planet. Okay? And when I busted myself up yacht racing the other week and lost part of a finger and blah blah blah. Within an hour or so, I'm getting world-class treatment in the public system at no cost. Like seriously, this is like seriously. So anyway, all I'm saying is that I think at the moment people, why am I making this point? I think too many people are saying, I don't earn enough, it's someone else's problem. I haven't got enough in super, it's someone else's problem. I don't have a big enough plasma screen, it's someone else's problem. And I just think we Australians have just lost the plot a little bit.
Lost perspective.
I really think we've just forgotten, and I'm just encouraging people to lift their heads up.
You must be listening to my rants.
Okay, good. Just look out. Yeah,
it's 27 years now of positive economic growth.
Yeah.
Like 27 years of life-changing. Our standard of living has definitely grown. I'm with you in the sense that we don't want the rich to get super rich.
No, we don't.
And we don't want that middle class to die out.
Absolutely critical.
That's absolutely critical. And our view has always been in our business, and we do, we specialise in property. 2 or 3, comfortable. 22, 23 properties, excessive, don't need them. It's the passive income is supplementary.
Sure.
Right? The 100,000, we're $2,000 a week in our book, in terms of trying to say to people, that's a comfortable, and that'll give you enough opportunity to travel overseas, have a new car, and just enjoy, your lifestyle. That's different to, the race to the millions and the billions and all of that type of stuff. It's just not. It's not who we are as Australians.
But it doesn't happen. I mean, I get people, people say, why are you still working? And I say, because basically, give me a hot tip. And I go, why do you think I'm still working? Yeah. Like, if I'm meant to be, but you're the investment person, and I go, well, I can't be much good, can I? I own, which I bought third hand, by the way. I still watch my pennies. I own a perfectly good third hand sailing boat.
Let's just throw money out down the drain.
Oh yeah, it is, but it's in the budget. You see.
That's it. There we go.
So this
delayed gratification.
You budget for fun.
How long was it before you actually bought? Is that just to keep your mind
ticking over? Because surely at some point that you probably are making wild assumptions here, but it's probably just to keep your mind ticking over rather than the necessity to work at this point in time. That
is true. But Vicky and myself have got a thing called the Clitheroe Foundation, and the other advantage of me working is that you are right. We actually don't want 20. To be perfectly honest with you, if I had 20, any more than 2 or 3 properties, just managing the bloody things would drive me insane. So I'm not interested. Okay, I've got no problem with property, but let someone else do it. Okay, seriously. But the thing about working is that it means the money can go into our foundation, and our foundation provides scholarships to young Australians in medical research and the arts and so on. And so another advantage of working is, Kerry Packer said to me this one day when I sold IPAC, and Kerry said, son, he said, you've made a little bit of money now. And I'd go, I think it's quite a lot of money, Mr. Packer. And he'd say, call me Kerry. And I'd go, yes, Mr. Packer. And I'd say, I said, look, for the way I live, he said, son, I'll never forget this. He said, you can't even afford 1/10 of a Learjet. Oh. And I thought about that, and I went home thinking, why would I want a Learjet? Yeah. Like, why exactly, maybe when you get to that point in your life, at my sort of age, you can afford to fly business class. And I reckon that's pretty flash. Yeah, exactly. So I don't really get some of this. And the other thing I do notice, and you'll notice this, that it is absolutely, where the behavioural economists are right, is that if you've got next to no money and you cannot feed the children, and your health and your teeth are falling out, that is miserable. Okay?
Correct.
It is absolutely miserable. But there aren't many people in that situation in Australia, really, realistically. So basically, though, we don't need to get to much money where your increase in happiness for the extra dollar is marginal. And for those who are competing to be the richest person on the planet, they're always miserable, because there's always going to be someone with a bigger Learjet or a bigger whatever or a shiny or whatever. So I think if you're going down that bigger, shinier route, look, you're on the road to unhappiness. Because and I think, by the way, the happiness number seems to be no more than about $80,000 a year, guys. that your marginal improvement in happiness for each extra dollar, and above a couple of hundred, it is sometimes a negative improvement.
Yeah, wow.
No, it really is, because then you start to see shiny toys, and everyone's got a bigger shiny toy than you have. You know, I mean, I got the train in here today and walked down York Street, so you know, I mean, could I have afforded to have a limo to come and pick me up and pay the $60 or whatever, or an Uber upmarket,
Uber X or
whatever, something flash.
Well,
yes. So in answer to your question, of course I can afford those things. But I felt better, as you can see me in a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt. You know, I felt better getting the train in and walking down York Street and buying myself a $3.30 flat white. I think it's how you feel about yourself. And I'm not saying how I feel is how other people should feel. All I'm saying is if you get yourself on this, it must be bigger. It can't be business class. It must be first class.
Doesn't buy happiness.
Was there a paradigm shift for you? Was there early in the career that you were chasing the shiny objects and you pivoted, or was it been consistent?
No, look, but it's easy to say this because I came from a family. There's only 2 children in a family where Dad's a doctor, at home Mum used to be a nurse, and stopped to bring up myself, my sister. So I had this really very stable background, and so we certainly didn't have a Learjet, and we certainly didn't fly business class. Let me tell you, but there was never. So I didn't ever lack anything. Like, you know, if I needed a new push bike, you know, usually for Christmas there was a new push bike. And so when I went to uni, you know, Mum and Dad were happy to pay my uni college fees at New South Wales Uni. They were happy. Dad was pretty clever actually, as was Mum. I think they gave me about, because uni college, as you know, it's 3 meals a day in your room, so you don't want for anything. And Mum and Dad obviously helped me out with the books, and that was fair enough. I think they gave me just enough money to buy beer about 2 nights a week, which meant I needed a job.
Yeah, because that's not enough.
Which of course I got pulling beers in a pub. Because being a Griffith boy, I used to make my living picking oranges on. Then when I got to the legal age, then I got a job serving beers in the Griffith Leagueies, and I could work in air-conditioned comfort, which I realised was better than picking oranges at 46 degrees. So you learn these things. You know, if you don't experience these things, you don't learn.
A lot of wisdom to share outside of money here.
And I did decide that picking oranges was not my future career.
I like the idea. You have the conversation at the dinner table, and that sets the standard, right? The opportunity costs. Do we buy a new car? Do we go back to England? Those types of things, right? It's making, you know, people who grow up in entitlement and all of that, who have maybe excesses, they don't make those choices. Everything comes to them. But that's not us. That's not all of us, is it?
Yeah, sorry, mate. I was just going to say, but some key things that you said is having that conversation at the dinner table and remembering where that happiness income sort of kicks in. I think that's 2 key takeaways.
Yeah, they do say that. I mean, it's only experiences that they say. I mean, Jerry Harvey also talks about it. He goes, after 10 million, now that's still a reasonable number, right? But he said the difference between the lifestyle that you live at a higher end, 10 million to $1 billion, is irrelevant. There is just no difference.
No, look, guys, honestly, stick with your health, stick with your friends, stick with your family, invest in relationships. And, you know, I look at the things that make me happy now. Look, if I couldn't afford this $3 cup of coffee, I think it wouldn't be critical. It's not a need, it's a want. But I'm glad I can afford it at this stage of my life. But the things that give me joy at the moment are my uni mates, my school mates, my wife, my children.
You're sailing.
I've got a grandchild coming next year. My first grandchild in May. That's my son Marcus, who, funnily enough, guess what happened to him, of course, because of what he learned at the dinner table. He works in PIMCO. And so he got a economics, a Master of Economics, and it's just fascinating watching that. And my next door did a law degree at Sydney in economics law, and it's kind of fun that, you know, and in fact I'm pleased to say my baby daughter, the 24-year-old, she said, "Oh my God, you lot are so boring," and got the marks to do the law and stuff. She said, "No, I'm not going to do that." So she did media comms, and of all things is just finishing off a commercial helicopter pilot's license. So I've actually got one interesting child. Sorry, you other 2.
Yeah, they won't listen.
Paul, you mentioned before that $32,000 was critical because $20,000 was for the business and 12 was for the house. What was it like back in those early days? Because as I was sort of looking back at your bio, you talked about you pioneered fee for service and refunded commissions back to your customers, and you were one of the first to do that. So can you sort of take us back to those days? What was it like backing yourself to do the business? There was two of you, I think, that came in with your $20,000.
No, it was actually we're a group of five.
Five. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
So you all tipped in 20?
Yeah, all tipped, had 100.
Yep.
Had 100, and then we took a serviced office in the level 66 of MLC Centre, which is like in Sydney. Which I understand it is still a serviced office, because we're now talking. This is 34 years ago.
Wow.
I think it's still a serviced office.
Yeah.
Look, basically. Look, I think none of this changes. It is a bit of a planning thing. So I, at that stage, was working as an investment researcher. The wonderful Arun Abe is an economist in Canberra. Savan Desoisa had a law degree and was a chartered accountant. And Piyush Gupta finished his MBA and also had a computing degree. And we really thought between the group, going sort of, a bit of investment knowledge, an economist, a lawyer. And we said, we don't know anyone. I was 27, the others were about 24. And so basically by the way, if you're wondering why these four guys who are much smarter than I am, two Sri Lankans and then Piyush's Indian background, schooled in Australia. Basically back then I think we were a less inclusive society back then, to be polite.
Yep. And
so the guys very intelligently, their business plan, they wrote down, we need a token whitey. Well, you could back then. I said, this is reverse discrimination.
That's right.
I'm allowed to bag myself. I'm allowed to bag myself. And so I thought this was absolutely hysterical. If you go and get an old copy of the Financial Review back in those days, they used to call us IPAC. They used to call us Indians, Pakistanis, and Clitheroe. And we didn't have any Pakistanis. but let's not get overly. Look, in today's world, some of those comments won't work. But I think I am allowed to lay crap on myself.
Correct.
And so basically, these guys are just, and we're still best of mates today, by the way. And to answer your question, I think one of the reasons we are best of mates, we didn't start the business actually to make money. Our view was that if we were smart enough and we worked hard enough, we felt that you would make money. But what do you do when I was the only one who really had a job? And the only people we knew were our uni mates. And so, well, what do we do? And we said, well, look, we knew enough about research and Markowitz. We'd all done modern portfolio theory at uni, and we really thought this selling stuff was just hopeless. We couldn't see how if a tax scheme paid us 30% and this paid us 6%, and the right advice was to pay off your mortgage, which pays you nothing. Well, how do we honestly feed our families unless we do what is maybe not? So we really felt, to sit on the client side of the table, that the best way to represent the client was to charge the client a fee. And we always knew that wouldn't appeal to anyone, because people would say to me, but Paul, we can get advice for free. And I go, of course you can get crap anywhere for free.
Sure.
Crap's generally free. It's go for your life. And so this fee thing 4 years ago was pretty odd. We never thought we'd crack a large part of the market, but the advantage was that we could go into our young friends in legal and accounting firms we went through uni with, and we could say, look, we qualified as you did, we charge the way you did, we know you probably won't, but if your senior people in the firm know a client, and so, we couldn't pay ourselves for 2 years, by the way. It didn't work very quickly. My wife decided to put off having children and wait 2 years and kept working as a school teacher who would have starved. But basically, but when people started to come in and they realised the value of what we call proper advice, which is stuff you pay for, and so therefore, if you were going to put them into a share versus paying off their mortgage, at least they were going in for the right reasons. And it was always a harder story, to be quite blunt. And that again, very quickly, is where the money show came from, because we had no money. How do you market? Now, back then, and people today will be sort of a bit horrified by the difference the world was back then, but back then there was no money sections in newspapers. There was nothing, nothing. Okay, this is 1982 or 3. There's just nothing out there. Anything in the papers was about a share price. 3% of Australians own shares. I'll say that again. 3% of Australians own shares. Not that long ago. Basically, so we started writing these. And
versus what percentage now?
56, 57. Including your super.
Super's now. There wasn't super back in those days.
And also some of the demutualisations, the Commonwealth Bank, and so on. So some people got shares who may not have bought them directly. But basically, the issue for us was, well, how do we got no marketing budget. We were struggling to pay the secretary on Thursday and paying our serviced office fees, let alone paying us. So Arun and myself in particular started on a typewriter, typing. Click, click, click. We'd type up these things talking about people and money. and we would Roneo those off. Roneo, that's a word no one will understand, aged under about 60. Otherwise, we'd get some copies, and we did have a fax machine, and so you'd fax them to journalists. And after about 9 months later, nothing happened. But sooner or later, a journalist has got an editor saying, "Get me a story in the next 5 seconds." And so I started doing a bit of money talking, 2GB, in the early 1980s. And then that led to the IPAC wrote, because we were always a research background, we wrote a report explaining why a state mortgage is going to collapse. Along with Stephen Van Eyck, who quite separately wrote a similar report from his firm. And we both published those reports, the Van Eyck report, which Steve wrote, and our IPAC report saying a state was going to collapse. What we didn't realise was that a state's got lots of money for nasty lawyers and we didn't. And so they decided to focus more on Steve, I think, Steve Van Eyck, because he was 1 and we were 5. But Steve, and Steve will tell you this story, Steve was literally lined up, he was worried about losing his house. But luckily for both of us, a state mortgage did collapse. Lost $500 million of retirees' money. You remember they were promising 19, just like a bank or building society, only better. The usual crap we hear.
State Bank of Victoria did the same thing.
All this sort of stuff. State Bank, pyramid building. All happens to us. And then I ended up on Four Corners with Steve. And they were saying, so how did you two very intelligent people know they were going to collapse? Gee, aren't you geniuses? And we were going, well, no, not really. So can you explain? Well, every other mortgage trust in town was offering 14%. Interest rates were much higher back then. The term deposit was 16.
Correct.
Very different world. So these are all offering 14%. The state mortgage is offering 22, 23%. We'd meet a state mortgage and say, how are you getting 22, 23? We know your costs are 3%. You must be lending money at 26. Who's paying you 26 when the banks will lend at 16? Why will they pay you 10% more? And all a state would say is, they'd say, oh, well, we're much nicer to deal with.
Sure.
Sure. So you're telling me, how about we go out and see some of your property developments? Oh, no. Commercial in confidence. If you see our property developments, you'll see how clever we are. And of course, there are holes in the ground and dodgy valuations. And so after about 3 minutes, Steve and myself, this is meant to be an hour program, and they've gone, what? That's it? Well, yeah. They were offering 10% more than anyone else, and that's got to be crap. And the poor old Four Corners speak, can't we get a fill? We need some more film. Can't we
Could you expand on that a little bit more?
And so people like Kerry Packer saw that and thought it was, I think Kerry actually thought, oh, that's so Kerry, I literally got a phone call from Nine one day saying, would you do the money show for us? And I said, what the hell's the money show? And they said, we haven't designed it yet. Will you shoot a pilot for us? And I said, it's going to be about whatever you want it to be about. And I said, well, look, I'd like to tell people if they're buying a $500 fridge, they should negotiate to save money. They should negotiate with their bank for a better rate, which a quarter century ago was unheard of. And so anyway, Channel 9 got me in and I got to meet Kerry Packer and they said, terrifying.
I got
he was lovely, by the way. And David Leckie and Peter Meakin and all the guys there at the time. And so we shot this pilot and Kerry actually didn't like the pilot because Kerry said to David Leckie apparently that, look, he's watched the pilot and it was about me, put $20 into your mortgage and, all my sort of... And Kerry apparently said, oh, for F's sake, if an Australian's got a 6-pack of beer in the fridge, they're happy. What's this guy banging on about? And David Leckie, to his credit, David Leckie staked his job on it.
Oh, wow.
David said this, and Packer said, fine. Your call, Leckie. David Leckie ran it, and it was the #1 show, the night, the week, the year. It just went absolutely.
I was a teenager when I was on. We used to watch it all the time.
The thing just exploded. But the funny thing was, I got back and they offered Channel 9, obviously offering to pay quite a lot of money for me to do this. And I got back to IPAC and said, guys, there's this really weird thing happening. I don't want to do this. And the Savannah Runapuri said, do what? I said, this TV show that Nine wants me to do about money. And and basically, they'll promote, they'll put Paul Clitheroe courtesy of IPAC, and they'll pay us quite a bit of money for doing it. The guy said, pay us?
That's right. We can pay the girl on Thursday.
So basically the guys packed me off and, we all thought this show would last. Kerry really wasn't very confident about it. He said, it's just too boring, son. You're too boring. He said, I like you, but you're too boring. And the stuff you're talking about, he said, what's a mortgage? Now, Kerry didn't really, I think, no, Kerry knew more than that pretty obvious. But putting $20 in a mortgage was a bit outside a billionaire's range of experience. And so we all thought it'd run for 6 weeks and it'd be a bit of an experiment and a bit of a dud failure. And the only thing we had to do was on week 3, we had to take the I don't like mentioning what I do, and if you've seen me over the years, whether it's Money Book or whatever, I don't like promoting my commercial interests when I'm trying to be an advocate. So you'll never hear me. Yeah. So for a while there on the Back of the Nine show, we had Paul Clitheroe appears courtesy of IPAC. We had to get rid of that in week 3. We had to employ 6 receptionists.
Oh.
How tall is he?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he wear a tie?
Yeah.
And that's the one clever thing that actually came from Channel 9. And I turned up in my best suit and tie to film, and they said, not filming on that. And I learned something. And they'd done this, they're always doing surveys of 10,000 people. And they'd done this survey. What do you think about this guy being about a 30-something sort of, investment type in his blue suit and red tie? And about 80% put complete wanker.
Yeah, right.
Wow. And the second comment was, he will overcharge us and confuse us.
Ooh.
So the suit and tie,
particularly the red tie.
It's the suit and tie in which I was so proud, the public actually saw as a barrier. They actually saw that as expensive and possibly even misleading. And maybe misleading is too hard. This person is going to confuse us. And I looked at that and went, wow, that actually really was a survey of large numbers of people, and that's why to this day, unless it's funerals, a tie respectful, weddings respectful, but basically I've never worn a tie since that day, unless it's a respectful situation.
Sure.
And I'm happy to
address to your audience.
Correct. Yeah, I'm happy to be respectful. But I was really shocked that a suit and tie was seen by many people of the public as expensive and confusing.
Ah, interesting. Good insights.
That is.
I'm not sure if it's still the same, but that's the way it was 25 years ago.
Well, I mean, most of our guys don't.
I noticed you blokes aren't in ties, by the way.
No, there's a couple of things I was going to ask you.
Neck, it won't fit around.
Your legacies live through us because the Property Couch, we don't talk about our business. We try and remain independent. So that's good insights. That a lot of your stuff is legacy for us. But what was it like trying to juggle a business that was kicking off and television commitments? Because I know
you might need my wife here.
Yeah.
No, my wife.
Your wife needs to talk to my wife because I'm sure they
poor
compare
Vicky.
notes.
Yeah, no, Vicky said, look, she said, look, oh, for heaven's sake, she said, look, she said, I really bought into an ambitious, she actually thinks I'm reasonably intelligent, poor girl, guy, and obviously she would like to own a house would have liked to have owned a house one day, 3 kids to educate. She'd like choices about how. So earning a bit of money was pretty important. The thing that she really, Vicky was really, I think, a big, and bluntly, I was gobsmacked as well, was the TV thing. Don't forget, no internet, no Foxtel.
Yeah.
We've got 4 TV
captive
stations.
audience, bang.
And so Money, including the regions, would get 5 odd million viewers on a Wednesday night, including all the country areas and blah, blah.
Huge.
And it's not because, now, in today's era, it can't do that. There's too much competition, but there's nothing else to watch, basically. And it was about it. So I think the thing that was a bit, just amazing for Vicky and myself was just the inability to even go to a restaurant. Australians are very polite, by the way, but just the fact that people know you, might want an autograph. Thank God there was no phones in those days, so at least it wasn't a photo. It wasn't a photo.
So they want you to pick up the tab.
Probably. But I think Vicky was a bit sort of like, what?
Yeah.
But in a sense, like I think a lot of smart women, Vicky said, no, but obviously the impact on our business of the Money Show, the impact on an IPAC was obviously enormous. Even though we never mentioned IPAC, people, if there's a newspaper article about me, somewhere in the article, I think as you mentioned earlier, obviously I sold IPAC some 16 years ago to AXA, which is now part of AMP, a long time ago. But people would obviously, here's Paul Clitheroe. If I was doing radio, to be Paul Clitheroe from IPAC, that would be the only mention. But obviously, the impact, if you like, of that sort of credibility, or people thought, oh look, I think that's a decent, trustworthy sort of person, and so that had a huge impact on our business. And my wife could really see that. Well, hang on a sec. This actually is a bit of a pain in the butt. To be quite honest, this is not really what I bought into. But on the other hand, I can see the success the business is happening. And so if that means that I can make a choice about how the kids are educated, we can pay the house off. So I think so Vicky's one of these smart women, which is why we're still married, who said, this actually is not my number one pick.
I'll live with it.
Are there other ways you can do this?
Was she more annoyed with the celebrity that came with it, or the commitment to?
No. Look, it is the joy. It is the magic of TV. You know, the Money Show would have me every week. We'd run an overseas story. Then it might be just it could be the New York Stock Exchange, or it could be something about a business in England. But what we do there is that for 3 weeks a year we'd fly overseas and we'd try and film. We only ran about 26 shows a year, and we would look to bang out 26 international stories in 3 weeks.
Yeah, wow.
And then we'd come back, and the magic of TV wasn't well understood there. I'd be wandering down Pitt Street and someone would go,
"You're on telly.
I saw you in Wall Street last night." No. Filmed that a month ago. No, I think you wouldn't. Yeah.
Well, my craziest story is I was on a Virgin plane and they were replaying an episode of my show,
Ooh.
and I'm at the front of sort of row 11 or something. I had to go to the back, and people are looking up at the screen, watching me walk down, going, "Well, you're here,
there." Yeah. But I think that's. I think though, being as you guys do, I think though being a financial commentator, look, people are thinking, look, it isn't a Hollywood star thing, for God's sake. You're probably a pretty boring person who's talking about finance.
Yeah, if you really knew me, that's right.
Yeah, well, that's what I am as well. So no, look, but I do think though that, look, if I ever had a tip for growing a business, having someone to pay you to do a TV show about your business,
it's not bad.
It's a pretty good idea. But I don't see it happening too often, guys.
Now, Paul, you're writing still a lot for Money.
Yeah.
You're the chair of the magazine.
Yeah.
What are some of the more common questions that you constantly get asked about that you just don't feel is dropping from an educational point of view? Like, you know, what's the Q&A that you have to do all the time that they're just asking that same questions, like, please, that we can get out to the viewers and the listeners?
The magic pill. People want the magic pill.
They want to get rich
So
quick.
the most common, had 2 or 3 times walking down York Street. Not people being impolite and yelling, but just people. People are lovely actually. And I like this in Australia, is that people respect your privacy. So people give you a glance and say hello, but you'd get the same. But generally people are polite. If you stop for a coffee, the person in the queue will say, I always want a hot tip.
Yeah.
And I got a couple. I say, look, don't stand in a canoe and be nice to your mother. Now, they are both quality,
very helpful,
quality pieces of advice.
Yeah, I like
So the reply I always give is why do you think I'm still working? Now, why do you think I don't have a 300-foot boat in the Mediterranean? Yeah. It just for heaven's sake. And so the thing for me is that the absolute constant is look, it's just spend less than you earn.
Yeah.
And look, you guys know as well as I do, when you get times like this where you see property going backwards for a while, you just think, oh, hang on a sec, where's this going? And you go, okay, the population's growing, population's living longer, population's wealthier than ever. You think to yourself, all a downturn in property can mean is good time to buy. That's all it can mean.
Yep.
I mean, how many of these have I lived through? I'm much older than you two. I've been watching this market for 50 plus years.
I'm 6. I've done 6 I've been in the profession. So
So when do you buy? When do all humans want to buy? During the boom.
Yeah.
When do we want to sell? One of the things I do love about property, by the way, is that in a downturn, it's hard to sell.
Yeah.
So I got really, really cranky during the GFC. You might remember I'll use Commonwealth Bank as an example. It was only, a decade ago. When did Australians sell the greatest number of Commonwealth Bank shares in the history of Commonwealth Bank? When it hit about $23.40.
Yeah.
Because, so one of the funny advantages of property is when the market turns to crap, which it always will, it's a bugger of a thing to sell.
Yeah.
I call it a self-protective mechanism.
Yep.
Because we just know that humans always want to buy in a boom and they always want to sell in a bust.
Yep.
And you say to yourself, why is the bust happening? Well, if you told me the Australian population was shrinking in size, our economy was going backwards, wages were going backwards, and we've got population shrinkage, sell your property as fast as you humanly can for anything you can. It is worth nothing. You guys are property experts, not me. It's a supply and demand asset. It's pretty simple stuff, isn't it?
Yep.
We're going to have 35 million people in this country in the next 27 years. We will probably continue to be one of the richest people on earth, and with no death duties and stuff, we have preserved wealth. I'm not so sure about that, boys. Maybe another day. No, one way of stopping the rich getting too rich, buddy. Yeah, I know, I'll make you cranky. But be careful here. You get me. Well, they might have a debate about that.
Yeah, we might have to take it offline.
No, we might have a debate. I'll take that one offline. But basically, it's just this simple money stuff, and this is why I can't give you a hot tip. But my 2 adult kids have been in the market for a while, and this decent little downturn, particularly where we live in Sydney, I said to both the adult kids, wow, this is your moment. And my son in particular is an economist, as he works at PIMCO. My son said, gee, but Dad, it's going to get worse than this, And I said, yeah, but if you find the place you like,
correct,
and you get a decent discount on what it used to be, I actually agree with you. I think it will be worth less in a year. But you're having a baby, we're talking about a 10-year deal. And I said, he's a smart kid. And he said, well, you're quite right. He said, in 10 years' time, the population where we live in Sydney, it's growing by, 500,000 people every, blah. And he said, crikey, he said, look, he said, really, unless the economy goes backwards or the population shrinks, we get hit by an asteroid. And so, but I find it very funny that we get this mass panic, the lemming thing. Oh, the market's going down, we'd better sell. Oh, the market's booming, we'd better buy. I'm not sure how we ever train people out of that fundamental human.
Oh God, I wish we could.
Well, but the evidence is just so. Go to any. I love stuff because I do love my economic history. If you want wonderful examples in history, you go back to when there was nearly a 99% collapse in property prices in Venice. In don't quote me exactly, 1328 to 1335 or something.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah. Bubonic plague killed nearly exactly 55% of the population in 1 year.
There you go.
And when you kill half the population, it's a bugger for property prices.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me Sydney's going to be 2 million people, I really think property is going to be a truly shocking investment.
Yeah.
Well, that's the conversation that we're trying to have with people via this podcast. It's a cash flow issue, not a balance sheet issue. Because if you can still the only thing that takes you down during a perceived bust is if you can no longer hold the properties.
Correct.
So if you've made a decision to buy and your cash flow is still okay, don't worry about paper gains and paper losses, because if you're playing the long game, it's fine. But like you, it's the advice that you're giving your kids now is a great time to be buying great assets.
But the point you see, really, in a sense, this question all came from what is a hot tip. I don't have one.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I don't want a lead yet, and Vicky and myself are quite happy with what we've got now. So I've got a couple of fintech companies I'm involved in where I'm really hoping we can do well out of those, because I'd love to put that money into our foundation, which is part of my Vicky and my personal legacy, and which the kids are now directors, and we'd love the kids to be able to keep giving money away when we're gone as well. So I would love to actually have another business success, so I can top up our charitable foundation. That would be absolutely fantastic. So in a sense, I am concerned about making money for that purpose, but I can't do it in 1, 3 or 5 years. And all I know about money is that if I pick a trend, and the most valuable trend you have is the fact that every one of us is an economic miracle. Basically for each Australian who's born, who comes to this country, they buy bread, they buy milk, they buy petrol, they buy a car. Correct. We are, it's called the aggregate economic effect. And each individual is just a little economic miracle. It's one of the reasons why and I get all the population pressure stuff, and I'm not going to get into a political debate, but one of the issues that I do know, putting aside the political debate and population pressure, one of the things I do know is every person who arrives in Australia or born in Australia actually adds to the economic wealth of this nation. And so that's why I'm a bit balanced on the population growth issue, but basically for me, and that's why the only hot tips I can give in the short term are spend less than you earn. That is the only hot tip I can give you.
It's a good one.
Because if you spend less than you earn, now I don't give a tuppenny toss, because the next question is, do I buy shares or property? I don't care. And the reason I don't care is there is no evidence that either asset is particularly better than the other. So if you come to me with a bunch of properties, I would encourage you to buy a few shares. If you come to me with a bunch of shares, I would encourage you to buy a property. But the idea is that when people say, give me this hot tip, and I say, look, let's be serious. It's about, do you have surplus income? Your point. If we have surplus income, then they get very excited about shares or property. They get quite upset when I say, I don't care. Just do something. Yeah, but
no. That's the same with us. Our number one question is where and what.
Yeah,
where should I buy and what should I buy?
Well, how's the market going?
Yeah. Give us your next hotspot.
Yeah.
Right? That's all we get is that sort of one question.
Yeah, but in property you can do more than, see, in shares I can do a little bit because obviously I believe in 10-year decisions as my kids buying a property. I think we can give, as long as we're confident the property is growing and the economy is not going to fall completely out of bed.
Yes.
I think we can give pretty good information. As there are more Australians, I think Woolworths will sell more food.
Yep.
I know our banks are getting smashed at the moment in the media, but the reality is they dominate huge parts of the market, and the market's going to get bigger. So, when I see something getting smashed, and certainly parts of the property market are now, and banks have been a bit smashed lately, I think, well, gee, forget the 1 year and 3 years. What does it look like in 10? And I do think there we can go to demographics and population trends. I think we can look at an ageing population, and you guys, look, I'm telling you how to suck eggs here, but you guys do know full well that first time in history with property, we used to have younger people buying in the outer suburbs, buying a quarter acre with a Hills hoist, and mum and dad were happy to live there as well. But now we've got both the baby boomers, my generation, who are all going, I know, I'll sell the big house in Pymble, I'll buy a 2-bedroom apartment by the harbour and free up $1 million. Well, they may end up paying more for the 2-bedroom apartment by the harbour than the big house bill. Why is that happening? Because that is happening because the first time in history we've got the aggregation of baby boomers and young people closer in. So, for both of my kids, I just said, look, kids, the only thing I would say to you as a tip, your budget's your budget. You can only afford what you can afford, but I would strongly suggest that you buy smaller, closer in, than bigger, further out. You guys wouldn't disagree, would you?
No, we ask every one of our key
I'm just hoping you wouldn't
guests.
disagree.
No. This is 100% in alignment. Like everyone we've had on here in terms of whether it be Alan Kohler, whether it be Alan from The Economist from NAB, Alan Costa, these are the people that say the same thing as what we do. Like, it is not rocket science, but we take a long-term view, right? So we don't speculate in property. That's just ridiculous. And we want property investment to be regulated because we do think there is too many people that are taking too much. I mean, the conflict of interest of your mortgage broker telling you where to buy and what to buy. And in fact, I've got a little development going on to the side, so I'll get you the fund.
Not the little development on the side.
So it's all that type of crap that we see in our industry, right, that we're trying to get rid of. But the fundamentals speak for themselves. I mean, people make a decision based on convenience, lifestyle drivers, and if they've got the money, the pressure's on the inner land, it's not on the outer land, right? So everything you're just saying there just validates that, and you've been through the mill a few times.
Yeah, but you can do that also with BHP and Rio Tinto and Coles and so on. So basically, the issue for me is that do I understand the story? And if I don't understand the story, like someone says I've got a development in the middle of somewhere you know nothing about, I don't understand the story.
Yeah.
Someone says to me, fly free to the back of Queensland to buy a property on for free flight, I don't understand.
Yeah.
The second someone mentions free, I get really terrified.
Yeah.
So there, I think we can, have short-term tips about behaviour, which is, don't talk to me about buying property or shares unless you can tell me you've got surplus income. Because if surplus income is your driver of wealth, I don't much care. And if you don't have that bit, we can't be talking any sort of tip. So I think we can give a range of tips about behaviours. Is that little bits of money put aside on a regular basis create wealth. And it may well, and so bluntly, that's why I get less fussed about, exactly, as long as it's halfway sensible.
Yeah.
So I think we can all give behavioural tips in the short term. Like if you choose today, maybe just to spend a little bit less money, that little bit of money we pay off credit card debt first up, for God's sake. I mean, that's something, that is a short-term tip.
Yeah.
Don't you talk to me about investment when you've got $2,000 on your credit card at 19%.
Yeah.
Let's not have this conversation. I get quite grumpy actually. I'm getting old. Well, I tell you what, you go off and pay off that. You come up with a plan to pay off that $2,000 on your credit card. Then you drop me an email to Money Magazine.
Yeah.
Because you are currently throwing money out the door at 19 or 21% per annum. Let's sort the bleed. So I think that it's not that we can't give short-term tips, but they've got to be around your behaviour, I think. Yeah. And the long-term stuff is the population growing? Is the economy getting weaker or stronger? Is the population getting richer or poorer? And I think in Australia, the world population is growing by 93 million people a year. That's births. That's births over deaths.
Wow.
93 million a year. That's what? 3.5 Australias every 12 months.
Yeah.
But terrify yourself sometime. Go online to one of the population clocks and just look at the hundreds of thousands of births every day over deaths.
Yeah.
Living longer in the entire globe. And so, yes, we've got all sorts of problems which are just distracting us. You turn your TV on, go into any newsroom, and this bit I do now, I spend plenty of time in newsrooms, and the rule in a newsroom for tonight's news is if it bleeds, it leads. Okay? So, Joe's business is going quite okay. Terrific headline for the news. What a promo line that is. Wowee. So we either want Joe's business to fail and Joe to, to do something terrible, or we want Joe to have won $1 million in lotto, or Jane, or whatever. So we are, and particularly with social media now, I mean, you guys must laugh. I mean, I put my phone onto news now, and it's pretty obvious that young journalists must build their career on getting hits. Yeah. And the headlines are becoming so close to poor old Women's Day, but some of the headlines are becoming pretty far-fetched. Like, I'm a single pensioner and I bought 132,000 properties. That sort of stuff. I know that's a ridiculous extreme, but basically I think we're really losing the plot when it comes to just what is common sense. Yeah. And so I'm interested in, all I know is that if you, and I don't care whether you're earning 20 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand, you know as well as I do, there are plenty of Australians out there today who've never earned more than 35,000 a year, and they're financially just fine. Yep. They really are just fine. Sure, they're probably getting a full age pension, but they've probably got $200,000 or $300,000 in the bank, and you can own a family home worth any amount, which doesn't count. This is quite wealthy, look, that puts you in the top 0.5% of the global wealth.
Yes.
Many Australian age pensioners are way up there.
We did that recently, where we sort of talked about how wealthy we are and how people, globally, don't understand.
So small stuff.
Paul, it'd be remiss of us. I know we want to respect your time, but it'd be remiss of us if we didn't ask you about the proposed changes to negative gearing. Do you have a view?
Oh, you're not going to like me. Look, let's just one very quick fact. The average American person is not much poorer than the average Australian person, within $30,000, $40,000. What's really fascinating is the median Australian, and median is a bit of an economic term, but as you guys know, that's the person right in the very middle. The average is a silly thing. We three add up our wealth, we four. Yeah. We four add up our wealth, divide by 4, that's our average wealth.
Well, if Kerry Packer walks in,
we're all billionaires. Average is ludicrous, So that's why the average American looks pretty good. The median Australian's got about 200 and, I'll do it in American dollars if I can, please. The median Australian's worth about 230,000 American. So call it about 300,000 Australian. That's the 12th millionth Australian, okay? Yep. 12 million are richer, 12 million what? In America, even though the average person is worth not much less than the average Australian, the median American's worth 52 grand. So you've got about 340 million population. You've got about 170 million Americans worth less than $52,000. Okay? So why do you think we get issues? And people ask me about, and this is not a political statement, people ask me about Trump and dislocation. And well, if you've got half of your population worth total assets less than 50 grand, and my fear is that people will always behave rationally. And I'm sorry, listeners, I have used negative gearing. If I'm playing football, playing rugby, and someone says today you can pass the ball forwards, I think you would be a silly team who didn't pass the ball forwards. It is a legal rule. The problem is, despite all of the punching around, particularly by the property industry, who's the property developers lobby group, but basically the truth is that no other first world economy, as you know, has negative gearing. They do not have it. People get a tax break on their first mortgage. So what you say is, we'll give you a break on a home you own. America, England, Germany, whatever. Yep. As a result, you get much more stable rental markets where you can rent a property for lifetime leases and so on. Because capital gains people aren't as excited. And obviously, by the way, the bad news is for renters, of course, is that as you know, in London, Germany, whatever, that you actually get higher yields. Because people are not infatuated with buying and selling and throwing tenants out and 1-year leases and God knows what else. So in principle, I would much rather a system where every Australian got a tax break on their mortgage. But this negative gearing thing has been around forever and a day. And I also respect the right of people to say, but this has been my expectation. So you've asked me a question, how do I feel about it? Well, we may recall Paul Keating had a crack at this, highly unsuccessfully, 20 odd years ago. Yeah. But I've got to be, and you can go back over all of my writings and stuff, all my words, everything of mine's been public now for 3 decades, and I've consistently said, look, I think it's an Australian thing. I'm not sure how these changes are going to go, to be quite honest with you. I don't really know. Yep. But if you're asking me a principle, in principle, I would favour a system which is less likely to benefit me. Let's pick on me. As a maximum taxpayer, I got most benefit out of negative gearing. We just can't step back from that.
Yep.
And so if you ask for Paul Clitheroe's Fairer World, Paul Clitheroe's Fairer World wouldn't have negative gearing. I don't know quite how to do it. Yep. Because if you're a leader, you're probably going to get thrown out of power. Yep. So I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'd need to be a dictator. But Paul Clitheroe's World, in fact, would give every Australian a tax break on their own home.
Yep.
It wouldn't give you a tax break. I'm happy for you to take your losses down to your income, but not negative.
Yep.
I would have compulsory super, because I think that does tell us something about saving. I do like compulsory super.
Agreed.
And Paul Clitheroe would also have much higher GST. And the reason that I love GST is that now all of this, by the way, is really bad for Paul Clitheroe. Who pays most GST?
Yeah, the people who spend the most.
People who spend the most.
Correct.
So and with that higher GST, I would get rid of some of the stupid payroll taxes and stamp duties and. You know, you'd get rid of a whole raft of stuff. But the trouble is, of course, is that if you're in opposition and you'd actually like to be in government, when someone comes up with higher GST, higher taxes, it's a great big tax, and unfortunately, I don't think we Australians. I think we Australians are expecting our politicians to lead us, and they're trying to win votes.
Correct.
And if we become a nation of what I call red lolly suckers, you know that thing the toddler makes a fuss in the supermarket, you give the toddler a red frog? What you do is, I think you do calm the toddler for about 60 seconds, but your behavioural training is just appalling. And I really worry that we Australian voters have become red frog eaters. I think we've just become sugar addicted. And so we're expecting our politicians to lead. In actual fact, our politicians won't lead us. We as a community of sensible people, we actually need to lead our politicians by saying, if this is explained properly, we'll go with common sense. So I will say, this super stuff and so on, the 1.6 million, I know a lot of my friends are really ticked off about it no end. I've looked at that and gone, I think a really high income earner gets too many breaks. And I really think I've had too many. So I won't pick on any of your listeners, and I won't pick on you.
No.
I think I've had too much of the, and I have paid millions in tax, like millions in tax. People are welcome to see my tax returns. And basically, I pay a lot of tax, and always have paid a lot of tax. But this community's given me so much, and I'm just a little fretful that if you add super to negative gearing to no death duties, I'm just a little fretful. It won't be in my time. I'm a little fretful when my kids are my age that if the middle Australian's worth 50 grand, and what that means, of course, is the top 5% own nearly everything, and I'm just a bit fretful. I'm a bit fretful that we're moving into the rich get richer.
Okay. So can I just say one thing there? One of your biggest messages today has been to spend less than you earn.
Correct.
The government should look at that too. I mean, because the only reason why we need higher taxes is because they have this need that they think they need to solve everyone's problems, right? Whereas the best way you live to society sometimes...
No, we think they should solve our problems.
Well, that's right. And I think that's the point. With 28 years of positive economic growth, we are in this comfort zone, right? And we haven't had a hard landing or anything like that where you can make this type of reform. I'm with you on GST every day of the week. It's a consumption tax. It should be absolutely to spend more money's raised from it. I'm with you on stamp duty as well. I'm with you on the excesses of negative gearing. I don't think you should be able to negatively gear your 30th property or something stupid like that.
We can
There's
certainly agree on
not too
that.
much misalignment with what Paul was saying,
No.
other than probably just the proposed change.
You might want people to have one or two properties or something.
Correct.
And the way, if you were, I'm never going to do, I get asked often enough, I'm not going to do politics. And by the way, the reason you'd fly the nothing is say you give something back. That's how I like negotiation. I don't like yelling and screaming. And so, but if you start with you can have two properties negatively geared, by definition the industry will say we'll make it 6. So you'd be silly not to start with 0.
Yeah.
Well,
And the answer's somewhere in the middle. Correct. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, very good.
Last one for me. Best advice you've ever received?
I think probably it's hard for my mum because my mum was a home mum and my dad was out doing the doctoring thing, so he probably in that older model had more to do with family and the money than mum, probably some, but I'll call it a dad and mum thing, but probably more influenced by dad, with dad saying, son, if you want to do medicine, medicine is, and he was an older fashioned doc, so his great joy was he practiced as a GP till he was 81, and
Wow,
what he liked doing, he liked medicine. He just liked medicine. He didn't particularly want to get paid for medicine. He just liked medicine.
Love what he did.
You say to an old doctor, what? Oh, hello, sir. What do you do? I am a doctor. That's what do you do? I do medicine. And I happen to go to Rotary Club on Tuesday night or something, but it's all encompassing. Dad said, if you want to do medicine, son, he said, don't do it as a money thing. Do it because it's something you deeply wish to do. Because you will be paid by the government, you are paid by the taxpayer, and there are always going to be resource limitations and frustrations and restrictions, and you'll be told how many MRIs you can send people for, and this person can't have that drug. And the old man said, look, and in a world where there's so much magic happening in medicine, stuff's going to get expensive. And he said, you'll probably become a bit of a Jesus Christ, you get it and you don't. He said, and I think, but if you want to do that, do it as a passion. And I said, I watched my dad delivering babies at 3 a.m. Oh, that was a hard job. And I said, what else? And so the most valuable advice, I think, I said, if you're not going to do that, he said, get a degree in something like economics or law. And he said, I strongly suggest you run your own business. And he said, I've never run I run my own medical practice. I've never really run my own business. But I get a bit frustrated that how I run my business is constrained by, look, it's the government's money, it's taxpayers' money, it's people's money. I should be constrained, But he said, I really strongly suggest that really doing something you believe in, but probably in commerce rather than medicine. And so, and that actually is, so I got the good job when I left uni, and I was getting paid pretty well when I left, and to earn no money building IPAC. And all my mates just said to me, you are just insane. You are just completely, you've given up a good job not to get paid for 2 years, you're completely crackpot.
Delayed.
It's funny, by the way, some of the mates now say to me, how lucky did you get?
That's right. They tend to forget the first couple of years, don't they?
How fun is that? I do enjoy, she's a dumb bastard like you got lucky. It's really. Oh, my mate's favourite one, by the way, is at the pub somewhere, someone comes up and they goes, oh yeah, you're that money bloke. How do you, my mates, they like a choir. How do you make it sound so simple? And my mates all jump up and go, because he's not very clever. You need your mates, don't you? So look, I really think that parental advice, and we're coming straight back in, Donna drag us onto it, we're coming straight back into the influence that parents, grandparents, family and friends have on their kids. And I think that was, for us, that was a transparent discussion around the dinner table. And I think that's interesting, because certainly for me that, and look, if the business had failed, look, this is sliding doors, guys, okay? Look, it's so, as my wife said to me, we had a mortgage at this stage, obviously we used the $12,000 towards the house and the $20,000 towards the business. And my wife said, oh, look at the, by the way, the property we bought was $90,500. It was some time ago. But even so, I think our mortgage is 12 or 13%. So the repayments took a fair bit of Vicky's teaching salary, because I didn't have one. So Vicky would say to me, oh my God, if this doesn't happen, we won't have a family, what are you going to do? And it's the joy of being 27. Well, if it all goes wrong, we'll lose the house and I'll get a job. So I think starting a business early is probably the second leg to that. I think at 27 you're pretty much without fear. And the other great joy, and it is a joy with money, if you're going to get something badly wrong, do it while you're young.
Yeah.
Like at 63, people now say to me, how are you investing your money? And I say, if you read in this book, probably International wasn't around much when I wrote that book that's on the table here. You'll probably see me saying close enough to a third property, a third shares, and a third interest-bearing securities. And to be perfectly blunt with you, as a 63-year-old, guess pretty much what I do with my money these days.
Similar.
Well, except there's a lot more international. Because for me now, so it is an important tip. So I think for me to be a risk taker at 63 is, obviously I've got some of my money in private equity and stuff, but if all that goes, it has no influence on a lifestyle.
No.
So basically, I think we've also got to look at our life in a bit of it. So early days, I think, is all about education.
Yep.
A 23-year-old says, I've got $5,000 saved up. Do I go to Europe or do I say, go to Europe? Go learn something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go and see the world.
Go learn something.
Go and get frustrated.
Go. And look, but while you're there, take a look at what franchises are working.
Yeah.
Just ask about the super system and the tax system. So don't just be a dumb tourist on a beach.
Yeah.
And so education. Go learn something.
Yep. It's
But
amazing.
then I think you get through that phase. So if you're going to take risks, I do think early is better. And if you're going to take risks later in life, like with your redundancy payout or whatever, that is absolutely fine. But gee, I get fuzzed down at the closing of both the Toyota and the Holden plants talking to workers. And you guys, we all know full well that X% of those workers are going to take a very large redundancy check, and it's not going to go well.
No. It's not going to hit the mortgage, or it's not going to be put away for tomorrow.
Or it's going to go into a business which they don't really know much about.
Yeah.
And and again, I really ask people to just attune what they're doing to a bit of realism and their stage in life. Yeah. And I'm not saying to a 55-year-old redundancy, don't start a business for heaven's sake. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, don't just step into it. I had a guy saying to me, "Oh, Paul, I'm going to start a cafe." Have you been in a cafe? Oh, I'm buying coffee all the time. So what I managed to line up for him with another guy I knew, I got him to go and work for free in the cafe for 8 weeks and ring me back. Guess what? Not starting a cafe.
No. What do you mean we start at 4? What do you mean I have to prep all this food?
How hard? So it's a special. But if he'd come out of that 8 weeks and gone, oh, great! This is me.
Yeah, you bet.
Terrific.
Yeah.
So I just ask people, look, it's so it's not. Sometimes I think we leap. We leap into stuff at times. So I think they're for me. So I've tried to do the enveloping
cocoon.
I think you could be a bit wilder with your risk as a 27-something-year-old. I mean, seriously, if IPAC hadn't have worked, I actually think I would have learned as much as I would have learned in an MBA. Yeah. And I would have either gone and joined a fund manager, joined an investment bank, or hopefully had another go. Because I think the reality is that a lot of I got lucky. My first business worked. It doesn't happen all the time like that, and I think I would have learned and gone on. So basically, I think risk when you're younger is terrific. 63-year-olds, if I was you, I'd just be just a little more prudent.
Yeah. Cocoon all your essentials. Yep. There's a little bit on the side.
Oh, I've got some risk money, but if I lose all of it, it doesn't have a lifestyle impact.
That's right.
Well, I've got to say, Ben, when we're walking through the corridor of our office and we said, what's our wish list for our 200th episode? And you were well and truly up there. So we
high-fived when we found out.
When you said you'd join us.
You'd be happy to join us.
I'm just glad the other 10 couldn't make it.
No, that's genuine. That's absolutely genuine. So we appreciate you giving up your time. I mean, if anyone did not get
200
5, 6, 7 nuggets of wisdom out of that.
Wonderful.
But yeah, thanks for all that you did impact in my own life when I was back in the 90s.
Yes.
And thanks for all that you're doing to continue that legacy with your own foundation with the government.
Paying it forward's amazing.
I've thoroughly enjoyed today, and you're doing a terrific job. So thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, how much wisdom do you want in one interview? Seriously.
So when you opened up the podcast this week and you saw it was going to go for over an hour and a half, you're probably thinking, oh, gee, but it's a special episode, so there's some bonus content in there. And how could you stop them, man? I could have gone on. I mean, we didn't even cover off on leverage. We didn't cover. There was so much, right?
There was so much.
Mistakes made. So we might, if Paul
but wasn't he a good storyteller?
Yeah. Phenomenal.
It was a terrific storyteller.
You're very engaging.
So I hope you enjoyed that, folks. We certainly enjoyed the opportunity to meet Paul. He was generous, he was humble, And as you heard, he was telling some really great stories. So, happy 200th, Ben.
Thank you.
We celebrated in style. So, hey, my life hack today is...
Better be a good one, Bryce. I mean, it's only our biggest show ever.
Yes.
So no pressure.
No pressure. So, all right.
What do you got for me?
The power of the 7-day float.
Oh.
Now, I understand, Ben, that
Wait
this
a minute. I said this had to be the best ever. You're referring to some of the stuff we do.
Well, you did set that up. You didn't know where I was going. So, but I wanted to say that
I thought you'd go to the leaders of the world, to the thought leaders who are changing the world, and you circle back to you and I.
Well, Ben, why have I actually done this? Because what did Paul say in his interview? There was no shiny object syndrome. It was do the fundamentals well. If you didn't get that message from listening to him, what are your tips? Well, I don't have any tips. It's do these simple things. Probably. What did you hear from your parents? Well, I did these simple things. What do you do now? I do these simple things. So the point is...
Shock horror. Spend less than you earn.
Come on. Imagine that.
I mean, who would have thought? My God.
Now, again, you didn't realise that was a wonderful segue for me, did you?
Yeah.
But spend less than you earn is the power of the 7-day float.
It is.
Now,
it is.
We've talked about it before, but I just wanted to use it as a celebration of this 200th episode, that if you were to obey the principle of the 7-day float, it will transform your money management.
Correct.
It will transform your money management.
100%.
Because for the majority of the listeners that are out here, the enemy of their money management is not, oops, I bought a plasma TV. Oops, I just didn't realise I was going to buy a house. Oops, I didn't realise I was going to buy a new car. That's not the enemy.
No.
The enemy is the creep.
Yep.
The lifestyle creep on a Tuesday, a Thursday, a Wednesday, a Saturday where you tap and go and you don't realise it. So the reason I wanted to do this today, Ben, is this transformed my wife and my own money management.
Awesome.
To the point where it's hard to describe on a podcast. But I remember that video that we had with 2.5 men, and he's in with the accountant, and the accountant's trying to explain to him. He goes, "I earn."
We'll put it up on our socials. I think we've got it up there, but we'll make a link to it.
We'll
it's
do
a
the link to
classic.
it.
It is an absolute classic.
It's a classic. So
Yeah,
I was just going, yes.
What I love about you, Charlie.
So if you can imagine this, folks, imagine a cup of water, and he's pouring water in the top, right? And he goes, he tips the water out, and then he goes, Ben said, what I love about you, Charlie, and just starts hammering this polystyrene cup with holes, right? Like 20, 30, death by 1,000 cuts, there's 30, 20 holes in this book. And then he starts pouring the water, and he goes, what I love about you, Charlie, is you spend it faster than you can actually put it in the top.
Yeah.
And not to say that I was pulling it in the top massively, but it's just there was hemorrhage, Ben.
Yep.
And when we herded the cats,
This is what. Do you know why I will transform lives? Because if you think about it, if I gave you $100 in cash, Bryce,
yeah, I'll take that.
right, $100,
Yeah.
and you had no other access to money, could you spend any more than that $100?
Nope.
Can't, can you?
Yep. Like our
Simple.
grandparents, right?
Just can't do it. So even if you want to, unless you go and beg, borrow, or steal, you can't spend any more than that. So in the modern age, we just move that into a debit card, and you just stop yourself. You train yourself to mentally think that is all you've got. There is no more. There is no more, family. That is it. Once you work out your weekly budget and your 7-day float, that's it. No more.
The power of the
Gotta make
7-day
it
float
work.
is today's life hack, Ben. For those of you who are...
Circles back beautifully to your mindset minute, Bryce.
It does.
Because it's with less resources, people still get it done.
Well, absolutely a good point that you raise, isn't it? Because how many times have we had this conversation in the last few weeks with people where they say people are earning so much money that they don't know where it's going versus
we
the
talked about
people
with
who...
Paul, didn't we?
Excuse me, the people who have less. The people who have
So,
less... No.
mate, I think you've nailed it. I think that's probably your best
You happy
one.
with that? My best one.
The only reason why is because it's transformational.
It is transformational.
Like, it doesn't get any better. Spend less than you earn.
So the message, folks, is this. If you're not using the power of the 7-day float, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's where you pay yourself enough money each week to live for 7 days.
Yeah.
Now, we have zero judgment around how much you pay, Ben.
Yep.
Obviously, the less the better.
Well, you work it out. You do your expense items. You work them out over a course of your weekly allowance or the year, and then you divide it by 52. There
So
it
your
is.
lattes, your movies,
Yep.
your groceries, just the basics of a 7-day
all have to come in there.
come in there.
Yep.
And then if you run out of money and you've got 2 days to go, make it work using your $100. So there you go, Ben. Life hack. Did you know?
Did you know, Bryce? Well, coming back on what Paul was talking about in that great interview that we did with him, I circle back to the MoneySmart's, the government website. So all very good stuff in there. And I came across some research around what he's talking about because, we've got to start this young. This crusade that we're on to help people manage their money better. There's a thing called the Program of International Student Assessment.
Ooh.
Or PISA, as I like to refer to it, PISA. So what happens here is they make an assessment of how well 15-year-old students can participate in the real world. Okay, so they break it down into things like literacy, reading literacy, mathematical literacy, science literacy, measurements. So just different ways in which they can cope in the outside world. Now, this is a pretty serious study, right? There were 72 countries involved. 35 OECD countries and 37 other partner countries, right?
Not a bad section.
Yeah, so it's representing over 29 million 15-year-old students internationally, and they had 53,000 students participate in the financial literacy assessment.
Good sample size.
Good sample size, of which Australia had 14,530 people in the financial literacy assessment.
Okay.
And that representing 280,000 15-year-old students nationally. That's how many we have in Australia at that time. Now, how do we perform?
I don't know.
How do we benchmark against the rest of the world? So we had an average score of 504 points in financial literacy, which was significantly higher than the OECD average of 489.
All right, so we're a smart bunch.
Some comprehension, right? Australia's performance was significantly lower, however, than 4 countries, being China, Belgium, Canada, and the Russian Federation.
That's no good.
Okay, so the countries that we did outperform included United States, Poland, Italy, Spain, Slovak Republic, and Chile. Okay.
Is that your accents?
So I just, that's how I go.
Yeah.
3 partner countries, Lithuania, Peru, and Brazil.
How come you didn't do those accents?
I don't know them. It's pretty simple. That's probably why I didn't do them. Okay, so that was interesting in terms of what it looked like. Now, some of the other insightful pieces were, here we go, results for female versus male.
Okay.
Right? Females had a mean score of 510 points, and they performed significantly higher than males with a mean score of 498.
Oh, we're mean
so
males.
It's the males were, little clap from Ibis in the corner there.
Get to hear it,
Hey, do we need a shout out to Ibis? Thank you, Ibis, for the 200 episodes.
Yes.
You've been a huge part of this, and you've been amazing.
Should we have done it at the top of the show?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But we're doing it now.
We're doing it now,
which is really important.
So how do you feel about us getting to 200, Ibis?
Oh, she's giving us the wrap up. Okay, keep going. So that is important to understand that women are getting on top of their financial literacy, which I think
better
is
than us blokes.
better than us blokes, and that's good. So come on. We still need to do better. I mean, obviously you think about those countries like China, Belgium, Canada, and the Russian Federation. They're organising and getting on top of their money a little bit better than others, but it just goes to show you that's the sort of work that Paul is doing in terms of trying to facilitate that into the curriculum around money management, and we think it's a bonza of an idea, Bryce.
Love it. Did you know? I did not know. I think that's terrific stuff. So, well, Ben, I've got to say it's been a joy and a privilege to do this podcast with you.
Likewise.
I've got to say that we started off with very, very modest dreams for what this podcast could be, and to now stand here at the end of 200, having had an epic guest like we had today, to be over 4 million downloads.
4 million downloads? Is that... I didn't know that.
Over 4 million downloads.
Over 4 million downloads.
Over 1,000 5-star reviews.
1,000 5-star reviews.
The amount of guests that we've had that have come on and shared their knowledge,
Yes.
and just
Thank you to our guests.
the stories of transformation that we've had the privilege of people to tell us that they've been able to implement as a result of listening to this podcast. I've got to say, it is one of the joys of my life my professional life,
Yep.
that we've had the opportunity to do this. So it's
Here's to 200 more, my friend.
here's to
Here's to 200 more. With
So
a few more exciting changes coming.
there are. So next week we might have a few little change-ups, but mate, I front row seat to I know this will annoy you, but a front row seat for me to be around the Property Investment Advisor of the Year, sharing to all these people in our community is just amazing. And I just want to thank every single listener who's taken the time to listen to us, share us with a friend, come onto a Facebook Live, be a part of our community on Facebook and social media. It is just a joy and a privilege, and we are just so thankful.
And my turn to return serve to you, mate. I mean, I rabbit on and carry on, and you just keep it on the straight and narrow. You make things, you synthesize things into really understandable points, and you put great frameworks around it. I just keep rabbiting on, mate, and I just keep talking. So it's been a privilege for you to be able to steer the ship and look after this rabble of a crew, right, Ivis?
And we had a little breakaway with Ivis, but folks, she doesn't like being in front, but she
If you want to listen to Ivis, what episode do you introduce
many
Ivis?
things. Yeah, it was a while ago.
But
She does a terrific job. So again, to make it to 200 is a wonderful, wonderful experience for us. So
yes,
and just to give back to the community, say thanks. We had Lincoln write in to say, just tuned into my first Property Couch episode using Spotify on my morning commute. Very impressed by the info you guys shared. I'll continue making my way through the episodes. However, it's a little hard to keep on top of them, i.e. previous episodes to catch up on. So that's why I love the idea of your little project with the gold nuggets. The principles you lay very early on and build upon are very, very important. Just wanted to let you know it sounds like a great idea. For a newbie listener like myself, it would be very helpful. Cheers, Link. Well, the good news is, Ben,
we're giving them away.
it's available.
Oh,
The nuggets from the top 20 is available. So
top 20 or top 200?
the top 20, and we'll work our way up to the 200. Thank you very much, unless you're volunteering. But we are slowly, that'll build to 30, that'll build to 40.
Beautiful.
But at the moment, that foundational stuff is there. So for those of you who've made it all the way to the end of this episode, Ben,
Yes.
you can go and download it.
Bonus.
For those of you that had a friend who didn't get to the end of the episode, they have to go and tell them that it's available. But where will it be, Ivis?
Link on the show notes.
Show notes.
So she's not going to tell us, so I have to step in there.
Yeah, so there you go, folks, show notes.
Yep.
And it will also be available on our Facebook page.
Awesome.
So, Ben, and also on the Facebook group.
Yeah, Facebook group. So make sure whilst you're on the Facebook group site there, Bryce, you check out the Make Money Simple Again group, because we're sharing a little bit of tips and tricks in terms of managing money, such as the 7-day float.
7-day float. And you have come a long way, Ivis. Back in episode 1, would Ben be on Facebook? No. Episode 200, now he's on Facebook. On the interweb.
You drag me on, right? That's, I'm sucked
We keep
into the
you young,
vortex.
mate. We keep you young. That's what we do. So there you go, folks. I know we've indulged a little bit towards the end, but thank you for joining us and being a part of our community. It's been fun all along, Ben. So until next 100.
Next 100, Bryce, knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
See you next week, folks.